far as the lesson this morning, I thought we'd look this Sunday, not to be down, but there are behaviors, if you will. I think the society today calls such things as toxic, if you will. There are such behaviors that are counterproductive to being a Christian, counterproductive to being a good citizen. And we're going to look at those. We're going to look at some case studies, I guess, if you will. And that's what we're going to focus on here this morning, as well as this evening. Keep in mind the takeaway here is that these things are not good things to be doing, and that if I'm doing them, it's harmful to the church, it's harmful to the workplace, it's harmful to the family. It's not good anywhere that I might partake in these type of things. So that's the takeaway that we want to. Our proof text will come from Jude, verse 11. It says Jude 11, but Jude's only one chapter, if you will. It's a short letter. So over in Jude 11, it says, "Woe to them, for they have gone in the way of Cain, have run greedily in the error of Balaam." We looked at Balaam just last week. "For profit, and perished in the rebellion of Korah." And this idea of the rebellion of Korah, again, he's warning Christians of his age that this is not a good way to behave. The way of Canaan. We know that Canaan was a murderer. Well, I said Canaan. Way of Cain. Sorry. The way of Cain. He was a murderer. And we looked at Balaam last week. Balaam, he set the children of Israel up. He became the puppet of Balak, if you will, and he did it for a price. He did it for glory. Did it for money. And today we're going to look at the rebellion of Korah. The rebellion of Korah is recorded over in Numbers chapter 16. So you might want to keep your finger there or keep your book, keep a mark, because we'll be going back and forth. But Korah was they were a tribe, if you will. Korah was of the same lineage as Moses and Aaron. They were of the Levites and the Kohathites. The Kohathites chosen for a special service in the tabernacle. So they weren't necessarily priests, but they were chosen to be of service to the children of Israel there in the tabernacle. Moses was chosen to lead Israel, and Aaron was chosen as the priest. Korah didn't like that. Korah was jealous, I guess you might say. We'll look at this. But Korah led a rebellion against Moses and Aaron, and it ultimately led to them being made an example of, and that there was a miraculous event where the earth opened up and literally swallowed them up, if you will. They fell into a great chasm or into a pit, and then the pit closed back up. So the rebellion of Korah illustrates, as we study this, will illustrate three disruptive spirits to an orderly society, if you will. And that's what we're going to focus in on here, is these three disruptive spirits or behaviors that were harmful to the children of Israel back at that time, and are just as harmful in our society today. So the first, I had a transition slide there. First one I want to look at is the spirit of insubordination. The spirit of insubordination. Korah was, we see this Korah's spirit of insubordination here in Numbers chapter 6, verses 1 through 7. If you look over there with me, we'll read. Now Korah, the son of Izhar, the son of Kohath, and the son of Levi, with Dathan and Abram, the son of Eliab, and the son of Peleth, son of Reuben, took men, and they rose up before Moses and some of the children of Israel, 250 leaders of the congregation, representatives of the congregation, men of renown. They gathered together against Moses and Aaron and said to them, "You take too much upon yourselves, for all the congregation is holy, every one of them, and the Lord is among them. Why then do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of the Lord?" See the insubordination? He's sitting there going, why does Moses get to do all this? Why is Moses in this position of authority? Aren't we all holy people? Hasn't the Lord accepted all of us? Why, in other words, why can't I be leader? Why can't we rotate? That type of thing. Continuing on, that part of verse 3, and why do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of the Lord? So when Moses heard it, he fell on his face, and he spoke to Korah and all his company, saying, "Tomorrow morning the Lord will show who is his and who is holy, and will cause him to come near to him. That one whom he chooses, he will cause to come near him to him. Do this, take censers, Korah and all your company, put fire in them, and put incense in them before the Lord tomorrow. And it shall be that the man whom the Lord chooses is the Holy One. You take too much upon yourselves, you sons of Levi." So again, they came complaining. I want to, instead of being good citizens, if you will. I mean, as far as we know, if we go back in our readings, we don't read of Korah going before Pharaoh and making the plea to set my people free and so forth and so forth. But now when they get out they're out in the wilderness and they're heading towards, now granted they haven't gone into the 40 years of wandering, but if they would have behaved themselves, and this wouldn't be the first uprising, but if they would have behaved themselves, they would have just had a short trip through the desert, right? Wouldn't have lasted. They would have made it to the land of Canaan. But that's not what happened. People became restless. People became jealous. They, why, like I say, Korah is basically going, why can't we? Us 250 men of renown. Why can't we lead? What makes you so special? So, this insubordination, it was supported by influential men. These were the leaders of leaders. These were the heads of the tribes, if you will. These weren't just average, laboring citizens, if you will. This wasn't the lower class or the lower men of, I don't want to necessarily say that these were men of prestige, but they were men of honor. They were obviously men of that had leadership qualities. It says representatives, that there was 250 leaders of the congregation or representatives of the congregation, men of renown. They demanded equal rank for all, is what, we should all get a turn. We should all get to be Moses. We still yet see the spirit of insubordination, do we not? Still yet, if not, hopefully not in the church, but we probably recognize it throughout different places in our life or in everyday life. this spirit of insubordination, if you will, if it gets within the church, if you will, or for Christians who participate in spirits of insubordination, it rejects the spirit. It rejects God's ordained order of rank, if you will. Who appoints? When we get out into civil authorities, if you will, like when we complain about the president or we complain about elected officials, now that type of thing, or you know, I don't know what. Up in Michigan, there was men who were supposedly plotting to kidnap the governor. Depending on who, there were some caught up in January 6th, if you will. Didn't like the way things were going. That type of thing. What we got to remember as Christians is that government, if you will, the whether they be mayors, just every civil authority, if you will, those are ordained by God. Those are God's ministries. So who are we to be insubordinate towards them, if you will, to reject their decisions? If you, granted, we get the vote, and I'm not saying we shouldn't voice disdain for bad decision. That's not what I'm saying. But it's something totally different to, like in the spirit of insubordination. If you, to be insubordinate is like a complete refusal to do something. Consider some of these verses here. 1 Corinthians 11:13 says, "But I want you to know that the head of every man is Christ, and the head of woman is man, and the head of Christ is God." So, so why would we point this out? Well, because God pointed out a hierarchy. It's not Mike and Ron's church; it's the church of Christ. But now certain men are appointed for positions of authority, positions of leadership. Same way within the home. Within the home, there's a hierarchy within the home. And according to this, it's the husband, then the wife, then the children. So when the children try to uprise above the parents, that's insubordination, etc., etc. So we got to be careful with our, I guess you'd say, our disdain or our dislike for decision making for those that are above us, for those decisions that they make, that we don't become guilty of insubordination because we don't like them. I couldn't tell you, now you can imagine, orders and directives is a part of everyday life, especially within the military life. And there's been plenty of orders that I received or directions that I received that I did not care to do. I mean, a lot of them. And probably early in my career, there's some of them that I said, I'm not going to do that. Somebody else can do that. And I suffered the price for that too, But pretty soon, in the military, there's some tools there that if you're not getting with the program, they can help motivate you more so than probably in the civilian sector, if you will. In the civilian sector, they probably just hand you, there's no need to come to work tomorrow, But in the military, you might be working extended shifts. There is no, you just don't show up tomorrow type thing. You might be working extra shifts, depending on where you might be doing some extra PT. You might be doing some extra push-ups. You might have somebody in your face yelling at you, telling you how dumb you are for thinking that you could get away with such a thing. Unfortunately, we don't always have people there in our midst to help us keep that. But just realize, like Romans 13:1 says, "Let every soul be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except except from God, and the authorities that exist are appointed by God. We would do well to remember that. Again, they are appointed by God's providence. They enter in. Well, he's such an ungodly man, but still, he was appointed by God. God has used evil men all down through the ages to what? To bring about good, to bring about needed change, to 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 punish those that were insubordinate to God. Look at the children of Israel. Maybe if things aren't going right in your life, maybe if things aren't going right at work or whatever, maybe instead of saying he's doing it, maybe you ought to be doing some self-reflection and saying, what's the Lord trying to tell me? Is the Lord trying to tell me I'm not being who I ought to be? Because part of this, God says, that these rulers, these positions of authority, if you will, they're not there to punish the good. They're there to keep the bad in subjection. So maybe if you're riling up against authority, maybe you're part of the problem. And this spirit of insubordination, it disrupts every God-ordained unit of society. It disrupts the home, it disrupts the state, it disrupts the church. Like I say, wherever you go, if you're insubordinate, there's nothing good to come of it. So a spirit of insubordination is something that we see that Korah was very guilty of, and it's still something that is very rampant yet today, even amongst those that call themselves Christians. And it's something that we ought not to do. The next spirit that, if you will, is toxic, if you will, is the spirit of ingratitude. The spirit of ingratitude. Korah was ingratitude is reflected over in verses 8 through 10. They did not appreciate what God had done for them. They weren't thankful. They wanted more. Look over there in verses 8 through 10. It says, and Moses said to Korah, hear now, you sons of Levi, it is no small thing to you that the God of Israel has separated you from the congregation of Israel. So they were actually being given positions of honor, if you will. God has appointed you for a special ministry to bring you near to himself to do the work of the tabernacle of the Lord and to stand before the congregation to serve them, and that he has brought you near to himself, you and all your children, or all your brethren, and the sons of Levi with you. And you are seeking, and are you seeking the priesthood also? So you can get the sense here that Moses is like, well, you're not happy with what you've been giving. You're not thankful, if you will. What more do you want? Are you wanting the priesthood? It's not, and he points out, it's not a small thing that the God of Israel has separated you from the congregation. In other words, it's not a small thing. Why are you sitting here scoffing? Why are you sitting here complaining? It's no small thing for the God of Israel to specifically call out your tribe to say that you will serve me and the children of Israel in this special ministry. But that wasn't good enough. They weren't thankful for that. They wanted more. There's the spirit of ingratitude. They allowed envy of the priesthood to blind them to their blindness. They couldn't see it. All Korah could do was well, I need to get up. Look what Moses is doing. Look what Aaron's doing. They get to do all these special things, and that they forget. Moses was working himself to death, right? His stepfather had to step in and tell him, you know what, as somebody I know likes to say, you're doing too much. And you need to go smarter about the way you're doing things, Moses, as his stepfather told you, because he wasn't getting hardly any sleep, any rest. And that's often, in people in positions of authority, that's off, it from down below looking up, it looks like it's a lot of prestige, like, oh, look, he gets to call the shots, and that's all. He don't have to do any of this work. It's that's got to be so easy just to tell people to go do this and this and this, and that's the farthest thing from it. And I made that mistake being a young airman. I used to sit there and critique my bosses and say, "What an idiot!" Why would he do that? Why I would do it this way, and it's so much better to. And then when you get up there, it's like, oh, that's why he was doing it that way. Then you get a, as they like to say, you get a big slice of humble pie all of a sudden, right? It's real easy to have that spirit of ingratitude, to be unthankful of those who have made those decisions, and to sit there and cry, why not me? Why can't I have this? Why can't I have that? And really, we just need to be thankful for what we have and what we have been given. Because as Paul points out, that, whatever member of the body is, it all functions together, whether it's the little toe or the little finger, it doesn't matter. Because when one body part begins to become sick or begins to fail, the whole body aches, right? Others ingratitude that we might see out there is the ingratitude is one sign of it's a sign of ungodliness. Consider Romans chapter 1, verse 21. It says, because although they knew God, they did not glorify him as God, nor were thankful, but became futile in their thoughts, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Talking about children of Israel, right? Children of Israel of the past. They knew God, but they didn't glorify God, nor were they thankful. Matter of fact, the children of Israel, they began to bellyache. They began to cry. Why do we got to eat this manna all the time? When are we going to get there? We're thirsty. And they're reminded that they were told over and over, the Lord will provide for you. All you have to do is do what you're told to do, and the Lord will provide for you. Have faith, right? Trust in me, and I will take care of you. But they never could they? They never had enough faith to wait it out. Why? Because they had a spirit of ingratitude. They no more than received what they were asking for, then they would start complaining about something else. They weren't thankful. It's like, it's about time. Now what about this? No more than 3 days in the wilderness. Oh, we're going to die out here. We would have been better back in Egyptian captivity. And just imagine all the Christians who fall away from the church. I would have been better if I just would have never became a Christian. That's the wrong attitude. They go back into the world. Well, the church is just not what I thought it was. I just don't like it. So-and-so is mean to me. I don't like the way Jim preaches. No, I'm not saying that's what you guys say, but I've heard brethren complain about the preacher and say that they was going somewhere else because they didn't like the message that they were given. I get it. If you're truly not, learning, I guess, that's probably a good thing. But have you gone to that individual? Have you said, could we study this? Could we, have you given the feedback? To me, it shows a spirit of ingratitude. We're just not thankful for the things that we have. Nowhere does it say in the Bible that a Christian will have the best of the best, and especially in this world. This is what I'm talking about. We will certainly have the best of the best on the other side of eternity, but in this world, we can't expect that. We aren't promised nothing other than a manual on how to get to heaven. That's all we're promised. And it's on us to abide by it. God never said that every Christian will have a Cadillac. Not every Christian will get to wear a suit. Not every Christian will go without food. That's just not reality. So we ought to become thankful for the things what we have, and not complain and murmur and have a spirit of ingratitude for the things that we don't. 2 Peter 3:1 says, "Beloved, I now write to you this second epistle, in which both I stir up your pure minds with a reminder." Often do not appreciate what they have because of the envy and the greed for wanting more or something different. We're never content with the status quo. If we no more than receive what we wanted, it's new for what, 5 minutes, and then it becomes old. And you see this in children, do you not? Especially they're at Christmas time, they're opening up all these presents, and then they open up the one, oh great, look, and they play with it for maybe 3 or 5 minutes, and then they put it off the side. Oh great, look, and then then pretty soon all those toys are a few days later or a week or maybe even just a few hours, they're all in the corner shoved into a box, and you might see them once every month or two or whatever. I think it's the same way when it comes to adults. I'm not happy with what we're teaching in the Bible study. Okay, what do you want to learn? Well, I think we ought to do this. Okay, we do that. I'm still not satisfied. And I've been places like that. People complaining about what was being taught in Bible study. Well, what do you think we ought to be taught? Then you do that, and they're still not happy. Well, it's not done the way. Why don't you teach? Oh no! I'm not a teacher. I'm not going to do it. The spirit of ingratitude. I wish our church was like that church. I wish we had more people. Why don't we fill in the pews? Whatever it might be. There's always something. Yeah, there's always something that's lacking. It doesn't, and that kind of gets into, that speck versus the plank. We often complain about the little things and make big deals out of them, and we can't see the planks in our own eyes, or we don't focus on the really big issues, if you will. So we got to adopt a spirit of gratitude, not a spirit of ingratitude. The last one that I think we see here at Korah is the spirit of murmuring. And this is kind of murmuring is probably like a combination of the last two. The murmuring at the Rebellion of Korah, we see that, there in verses 11 through 14, and we can read this to see how they were. We see, therefore, you and your company are gathered together against the Lord. And what is Aaron that you complained against him? And Moses sent to call Dathan and Abram, the son, the Eliab, but they said, we will not come up. It is a small thing that you have brought us up out of the land flowing with milk and honey to kill us in the wilderness, that you should keep acting like the prince over us. Moreover, you have brought us into a land flowing with milk and honey, nor given us inheritance of fields and vineyards. Will you put out the eyes of these men? We will not come up. So, in other words, what are they saying? We're not listening to you. We're not going to participate. You brought us up out of the land. In other words, you brought us up out of a land that was flowing with milk and honey. What, to just kill us here and now, out here in this barren land? Is basically what he's saying. And then the charge to Moses, who are you to be acting like a prince over? Who are you to be ruling over us? They just murmured and complained about everything. And then pretty soon what happens? The murmuring spreads, right? It starts out as a small group, a small voiceless, influential group, if you will. The loud minority. And it begins to spread. Look there in verses 41 through 45. On the next day, all the congregation of the children of Israel complained against Moses and Aaron, saying, you have killed the people of the Lord. Now it happened when the congregation gathered against Moses and Aaron that they turned towards the tabernacle meeting, and suddenly a cloud covered it, and the glory of the Lord appeared. Then Moses and Aaron came before the tabernacle meetings, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, get away from amongst the congregation, that you may consume them in a moment. And they fell on their faces. So it started out with the murmuring of the rebels, if you will, the loud minority, and then it started to spread. And then we were told that the whole congregation was against Moses. You killed those guys. It wasn't, and again, it wasn't Moses who did that. It was the Lord who did that. The Lord punished them by opening up the earth and swallowing them up. That's what happened to Korah. But now they're going to be inflicted with what? A plague. And there'd be several thousand that would face their death that day. Tens of thousands. I think in total it was like 14, over 14,000 that would see their death due to their murmuring. Murmuring is a perpetual problem. Remember me talking about that in the last point, that we're never happy with what we got. We're unthankful. We always want more. Well, that facilitates the perpetual problem of murmuring. We start complaining. We start vocalizing that ingratitude. Israel, over and over and over again, complain. Like I say, I'm thirsty. I'm hungry. We're wandering too long. Exodus 15 and 24 says, and the people complained against Moses. What shall we drink? Like I say, they were in the wilderness all of 3 days. Now, I don't know. I don't think it's rocket science, and I'm pretty sure that they probably knew better then than they do nowadays. But, when you go out, when you're leaving somewhere, you usually what? Take what? Provisions with you, right? It's not rocket science. So what you would have thought that they, and probably would have took several hundreds of gallons or thousands of gallons of water to carry on their in their carts and on their camels and et cetera, et cetera. And you know, but they just weren't happy. 1 Corinthians 10:10 says, nor complain as some of them also complained and were destroyed by the destroyer. And that's really a good takeaway. For all those that complained in the wilderness at the beginning, none of them made it to the promised land, did they? Not one. They perished. They all perished. That entire generation perished in the wilderness due to their murmuring. Jews in Jesus' time, murmur, murmur, murmur. Complain, complain, complain. Look there in Matthew 11, verses 16 through 18. But to what shall I liken this generation? Is it like the children sitting in the marketplace and calling to their companions and saying, we played the flute for you and you did not dance? We mourned for you, you did not lament? For John came neither eating nor drinking, and they say he has a demon. The Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they say, look, a glutton and a winebibber, a friend of the tax collectors and sinners. But wisdom is justified by her children. Now, and the last point, John did it this way. John did it without eating and without drinking. And you said, and you weren't happy with that. Then I did it with eating and drinking. And guess what? You weren't happy about that. The spirit of murmuring, just never content. We got to be careful with that. We have to find contentment. Paul iterates that over and over. I'm content with whatever. As long as I have food, raiment, and clothing, I'm content. Why can't we find contentment? And then over here in Jude 16, we see the warning. That's what the false brethren. These are glubbers, complainers, walking according to their own lusts, and they mouth great swelling words, flattering people to gain advantage. Remember we went back to the rebels? The rebels, I imagine that's how they got that 250 influential men behind them. They probably were flattering people, saying, oh, you'd probably be a better leader than what Moses is. Come join us. We got to really be careful. Murmur. I understand. We like to vent. We like to get things off our chest, and sometimes we need to do that. But that should probably be done private, probably between you and another person. But the spirit of murmuring is just complaining to be complaining, if you will. Never content, never happy, always finding something to complain about. And it's like a cancer. It's like anger. Anger, there's nothing sinful about anger. But it's when anger's not dealt with, or when anger's not, handled properly, that it becomes a problem. When it manifests itself into bitterness, and into those things, then it's a sin. Same way, there's nothing wrong with voicing discontent about something. But when it turns into murmuring, then it's a sin. Then it's not good. It's not good for the church. It's not good for society. It's not good for the family. And we become just like Korah in the wilderness. So that's the lesson. I'll give it to you. Tonight we're going to look at respect for authority. I think if you take this lesson, that's the overall issue is a lack of respect for authority. So we're going to look at that here this evening. As we close out, let us not rebel against God's order, His will, and the blessings or His providence. Remember, He appoints ministries. Those that are given positions of authority, they are appointed by God. That's what the Bible tells us. And so let us always submit to His will without murmuring and complaining. And just be content with whatever we've been given and with whatever hand we've been dealt with. So that's the lesson. Now we want to extend the invitation. The invitation is your opportunity